In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at very cold air that is already kind of ongoing. I know today was a little bit warmer up and down the eastern seaboard. Tomorrow will be much more different. Also, by the time we're reaching Saturday, Sunday, there will be another warm day in there. But the overall theme is colder temperatures, and we're going to continue to kind of dive deeper and deeper into those cooler temperatures in the eastern United States. Also, a few snowstorms that we need to track, some for the northern southeast, some for the mid-Atlantic, some for the northeast, Ohio Valley, Midwest, Great Lakes. They're all going to see chances of snowfall that we need to discuss. Severe weather is also going to be a topic of discussion. So let's go ahead and move into it. We're looking at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the National Weather Service, and what we see is from the 19th through the 23rd of February. Some warmer temperatures set up over the western seaboard, and we call this a positive PNA, although this one is pretty west base. A lot of times we see this extend all the way into the Rockies. This time around, cooler temperatures are likely for those areas, so it's very west based. And as a result, we see this cold is pretty west based as well. Plains, Ohio Valley, areas of the Midwest, these are the heart of the cold, although it does reach the eastern seaboard here. We can see that the heart of it is nearer to the center of the United States rather than the eastern United States. When we look at the precipitation, day after day after day, this is continuing to dive closer to the southeast as far as where we're expecting the most of it, as we've seen storms move through these areas with none expected really afterwards. We've continued to see this area kind of just drop off. We continue to see the southeast, though, being a area of concern. Definitely a few storms moving up, like a nor'easter, are at the kind of forefront of what we're thinking. One or two of those could be possible, so we're going to be discussing that a little bit later on. Looks a lot like January, by the way. When we look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, we see things change in a very big way. The premise stays kind of the same, but the reasoning is we really have a much wider positive PNA. This one is a full-blown, almost east base positive PNA, so the very opposite. We haven't seen really a typical one. This is for the 21st through the 27th, by the way, but we really see a full-blown western half of the United States being above normal, and then as a result, the cold is way suppressed to the southeast, as you can see. Pretty exclusive down there. We do see some of it stretching into the north and western areas here, but the heart of it is right here over the southeastern states. Again, very similar to January. When we look at the precipitation, we see that a lot of it gets driven out as that cold dives deeper and deeper into that southeast area. A lot of the storms are going to be moving well offshore, too far offshore really, to bring much in the way of impacts here to this area. So we may end up in a colder but drier pattern once again, a lot like January. This is probably the third or fourth time I've mentioned January in this video, even though we're past January, but there is a lot of similarities here overall. When we look at the past 10 days of temperatures as well, we kind of continue to see a cooling trend for a lot of these areas, especially when looking at areas in the plains and Midwest. We started to see this cold air kind of start to intrude on this area and even into the Great Lakes. The Northeast is cooling, and this red area over the deeper south is continuing to kind of recede further and further southward. So overall, we are seeing a cooling trend already taking place, and this is only going to worsen over time. So I am very curious, as you guys know. I know a lot of you probably aren't as interested, but I really am curious to see what February ends up looking like on paper once it's said and done, because we had a very warm start, but the cold may be making a comeback. Let's take a look here at the European model first off. Yesterday we had issues, and today the European model runs came out like normal. So we've seen kind of a good kind of comeback from the European model. When we look at tomorrow, I want to just start out tomorrow afternoon. We see that there is a lot of activity out west. So we see snowfall, rainfall, respectively, depending on your exact location, but the west is very active here. And this is that day that we've been kind of pointing out that the east kind of gets a little bit less active. We see a little bit of a quieter pattern in the east. It's cooler, but overall quieter. Saturday is when the action starts again. We see snowfall to the north here for areas of the Midwest, Great Lakes, down through the Northeast. We do see this low originating down here, and we do see severe weather originating for a lot of these areas. This is by 4 p.m., and we don't even really see the severe weather starting out yet. We have to move towards overnight to really see that start up. Here's 1 a.m., and this is where we get thunderstorms in this area where we're expecting potentially a severe weather outbreak. It has the potential to be really, really bad, and we're going to be watching it. And it's likely that this is going to be a pretty bad event. So we'll watch it very, very closely. And it could also be, well, likely is going to be an overnight event, unfortunately, which just adds to the danger. So for Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama in particular, but also those surrounding states, we need to be watching this very, very closely. I want to keep going. I want to take us straight towards Sunday afternoon. What we see is that this low ends up being very, very strong over areas of Pennsylvania. Thunderstorms, basically from the mid-Atlantic southward, are very present along the eastern seaboard for Sunday afternoon. Definitely something to watch for, and there may even be a severe weather threat along these areas. It's still unknown, but I think there's definitely a chance of that. We do see a good amount of snowfall here across the Cascades and Rockies, as they're kind of seeing the activity continue. We have snowfall still for the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and up into portions of the Northeast. Although this storm as of now is expected to move up into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and that creates a lot of mixing issues, especially to the east of these lows. The west side is where we'd be mostly watching for more persistent snowfall. By the time we reach Monday afternoon, it's kind of like actually tomorrow on Friday, where, you know, there's quite a bit of activity out west in the Cascades and Rockies again, but we're kind of quieting down in the east, and also very, very cold. Very cold for Monday the 17th here in the east, and that's going to kind of continue into Tuesday the 18th when we see a low forming. And this one's interesting. I'm going to be tracking this very closely, as it does pose a threat to my local area here in southeastern Virginia. And the question really is where will that low originate? And then is it going to kind of take this turn off the southeast coast like this? Or will we see it kind of originate a little further northward and move up into the mid-Atlantic? That's kind of the question mark. And the southern route would really put these areas, these more southern areas, on high alert. If it moves a little bit further northward, let's say, you're mostly going to be watching the more northern areas there. And then, you know, my local area further to the south would be mostly rain. We see this one starts out and we see the plains getting snowfall, and there's still some discussion. This is 5 days away. If the snowfall will be this far south for Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, we could see rain snow line set up much more to the north here and see more snow for Nebraska and Iowa. Or it could even be further south, and we could see a little bit less for Kansas and Missouri, and more like northern Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. So there's a big question mark even from the origination of this storm. And as we move towards Wednesday, we can see that this particular model takes this low and dives southward with it into the Gulf. We get a lot of moisture working its way up into this system. Snowfall already happening for some of the lower Appalachian mountain range. And as we move forward a couple of hours, by the way, here's your Arctic air mass in place. So we see that there is plenty of cold around for these areas. And we start to see this snow spreading a little bit more here. What we see is that it's just a little bit further north than what we're going to see on the GFS model. But we do see this low pretty well to the south. There's just not enough cold air, and we end up with snowfall for the Mid-Atlantic. But for my local area here in southeastern Virginia and eastern North Carolina, it's more of an ice storm or rainstorm. But the Mid-Atlantic does phenomenal, and I would love that for you guys, because I know that you guys in the Mid-Atlantic have been wanting more and more and more snow, and I want you guys to be happy, of course. We do see this one move up the East Coast a little bit too, into southern New England. So this one has the potential to be a full East Coast nor'easter. As of now, that one is pretty exclusive to very far eastern areas and a little bit weaker, but it does occur. And we do see also another kind of opportunity just a few days later. This is Sunday the 23rd here, and we get a jet stream with a very, very vigorous positive PNA, a nice trough here. So you have this northern energy, and then you get a low trying to form here in the Gulf, generally in this area. And all it really needs to do is latch on and join that jet stream, and we would be back on for these areas again for another one. But we can see it tries to move up. We get the low developing, and then it's just too far offshore, way too far offshore. We end up not really seeing it come together there. After that, we see another cooldown, perhaps after the 25th, 27th, 28th there. and more of like a clipper system kind of rolling down along that northern jet stream, bringing some Midwest and Ohio Valley snowfall. But the activity definitely takes a turn, and we see a lot less of it down the line after, I would say, the 23rd, 24th time frame and beyond. We continue to see the cold air, but really after the 20th is when we start to get big question marks as far as the pattern, and things could look a lot different. So I want you guys to take that with a grain of salt for sure. GFS model here, as we take a look at it, we get this kind of first storm. Again, severe weather is inevitable for a lot of the deep south into the southeast for Sunday. Deep south for Saturday, southeast for Sunday, just as a correction there. Some wintry weather for the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and Northeast there, and that gives way to very cold air. Here comes Tuesday the 18th, and again, your low is a little bit further southward. We see the snow is a little bit further northward here, though, for Kansas, Missouri, a little bit less for Oklahoma. So a little further north with that rain snow line on the western end. As we keep moving forward, though, we see that this low is very close to the European model, actually. You know what I was referring to was a previous model run. So I forgot that the 12Z run came out, but we have seen some lows forming a little bit further to the south, and that snow being a little bit further to the south as well. But I'm actually impressed. This looks very similar to the European model, with mostly the mid-Atlantic seeing a moderate heavy snow event, and then southern New England, a little bit less impacts on this one. But I do think this is either way going to be a close call for a straight up the coast snowstorm. That jet stream, as you can tell by this point, is pretty vertical. This is exactly what you need for these more coastal systems. A jet stream moving up like that and a low kind of joining forces with it for one of those like vertical up the coast snowstorms, which have been very, very hard to come by. They are a harder storm to happen. They don't happen very often, and when they do, they pack a punch and you remember them. Like 2010 comes to mind. December of 2010 was straight up the East Coast. And there's been a few others, of course, but very, very memorable storms, typically large snowfall totals. As we can see, by the 23rd, we also get this kind of coastal signal. The GFS model is a little bit split on it. We have a piece of energy in the Gulf, a piece of energy in the Southeast. It's a little split up, and the cold is a little bit less to work with. But we still end up with a northern piece of energy bringing some Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast snowfall actually by the 23rd into the 24th, which is interesting. And then we get a couple of more systems here. The jet stream still looks like a ridge in the west, trough in the east, but that trough is much more centered over the central states. So we end up with these storms that are kind of elevating through the southeast region, perhaps putting the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast back in the crosshairs for after the 25th. But again, that's where a lot of question marks start to pop up. Even here by the 1st of March, which is my birthday, by the way, we end up getting a lot of moisture here across the Gulf and Southeast, and more cold air in the east here. So this could, again, pose a risk. But the important thing to note is, again, after the 20th, we really start to have question marks, and this is a good 9 days after the 20th. So there's definitely huge reason to believe that this is going to change in some big, big ways down the line. Now, as we take a look at the total precipitation, we do see that the west gets quite a bit. The east looking a little bit more lackluster now. Still a good amount, but much less. We saw a major storm roll through. Lots of rainfall for the deep south, southeast, mid-Atlantic, northeast, even some wintry weather up there, of course. And that has brought down the totals of the upcoming precipitation because we've lost a major storm on the model runs because it happened now. We're past that. So that's the reason for the big drop-off. And that combined with after the 25th, there being some reason to believe we could be slowing down. Definitely those two things contribute to the lowering of the amounts here in the east. And when we look at the anomalies, it's pretty mixed. It's some areas above, some areas below average here. The west maybe even taking an uptick in activity. So definitely a changing of the tides here, if you will. When we look at the total snowfall on the European model, when we look at the west, just still a massive amounts out there. The central states into a lot of the kind of Great Lakes and Ohio Valley here, we're doing really good for most areas. Looking at some plowable snowfall totals in the purples are 6 to 10 inches, pinks are 10 to 20. The blue areas is just where the model is picking up on some snow holes. And unfortunately, those totals, if correct, would be below 6 inches, which for a 2-week period up there is not that impressive. When we look at the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, though, we see pretty impressive amounts. Plowable snow for the Mid-Atlantic, and then potentially feet for parts of the Northeast. So definitely interesting there. GFS model is going to be actually surprisingly in agreement, like very, very good agreement here. West does phenomenal. Again, you get like the same snow hole and plowable amounts in other areas here across the central states. And then Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, although the Mid-Atlantic gets more on this GFS model, we still end up with a very similar look. Let me switch them back and forth. I mean, that is pretty similar looking. You can look all over the nation, and it's actually impressive. 384 hours here. We're seeing a very, very similar look almost through the entire month of February. So really, really cool stuff. Here is your temperature anomalies. And again, colder air working its way in as soon as tomorrow. We saw today was warmer up and down the eastern seaboard, like I said, but tomorrow, Friday, very cool. Sunday, very warm. Monday is when we really start to see the major cooldowns, especially these pink areas. This is where we're looking at brutal Arctic air. We're talking 25, 35 degrees below normal. And this particular model is calling for 40 to 50 degrees below normal in a lot of these areas, which is just insane, very insane. As we keep going, we see a lot of this does dip down into areas like Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. We see it work its way eastward for closer to like the 20th, 22nd, 21st. You know, I guess that was out of order. 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th here. We start to warm towards the end, but then we get another cool down at the 28th. So really, once we start cooling down here, it just escalates and escalates and escalates. And we can see throughout the model run, a lot of the time, the West is quite warm, especially talking after the 20th here. Look at that. That's when we get that positive PNA back. Really cold look in the East. And the GFS model, same thing. I mean, we're going to cool down, and it's just going to keep getting colder as we approach the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. We warm up eventually with some more cooldowns coming in afterwards. So we get back into a revolving door pattern at a certain point, but overall cooler in the East for the foreseeable future. Storm Prediction Center outlooks, we do have 2 areas of general thunderstorm risk here for today. California, and then the Southeast, where we expect general thunderstorms. Of course, severe weather is possible, but not expected at this point. Right here in the kind of central California area, we do have a level 1 marginal risk of severe weather, so keep that in mind for today. Today's almost over, keep in mind. Tomorrow, Friday the 14th, we have 2 general thunderstorm risk areas, one near the Four Corner states, and then one here for kind of the south central, and it does extend into areas like Kentucky and Tennessee. Tomorrow, Friday the 14th, and then day 3 is when we expect some pretty major severe weather to be possible. Large area of general thunderstorm risk there for the lighter green. Darker green is your level 1 marginal risk. Yellow is your level 2 slight risk, where we start to expect some scattered about severe weather to occur. And the orange area there throughout some counties of Texas, parts of northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and then central Mississippi and central western Alabama. That is your level 3 enhanced risk, where we expect a little bit more widespread severe weather to start being possible in there. Again, for Saturday the 15th, and then especially overnight Saturday into Sunday the 16th. Mostly happening like 11 p.m., 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So that overnight Saturday into Sunday, we're really going to be watching for some dangerous severe weather perhaps. With all that being said, we do upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.